Nick, why are we wearing the same clothes?
I hate it when this happens.
I really do. Like, you need
Just
to text me, and then I text you, and then we were like, what are you wearing? So that we don't show up looking like this on a podcast.
it's the same outfit. Like, okay, fine. I mean, does this help? Could I
No.
some
Well, you know what? Actually, it is fine because it's our birthday.
which birthday song do we play here? Is it like there's so many songs about birthdays?
I know there is so many songs. Cumpleaños feliz. Happy birthday
Yeah.
to you. It could be any of the above, but hello, Groundpassers, and welcome to our birthday and yours. It is Groundpass's second birthday. It doesn't actually feel like our second birthday because it feels at the same time like we've been doing this for 20 years, but then at the same time for no time at all. So happy to be here. Super excited to be celebrating 2 years of Ground Pass. We did it. We did it, Nick. We were consistent for 2 years, and I hope we will be consistent for many, many more. Nick and I have been thinking about doing an episode like this for a very long time. Not specifically a birthday episode, but we've been thinking about doing an about Ground Pass episode, especially in the last few months. We have been very happy to see that our numbers have grown. We have a lot of new listeners, which has been awesome. Thank you. Welcome to the Ground Pass family. You are now Ground Passers. But because we have a lot of new listeners, we've been wanting to do an about Ground Pass episode so everyone can kind of get an idea of who we are, what we're about, what we are doing in this little tennis landscape. So, what better time than to do an about Ground Pass episode than on Ground Pass's birthday? This episode is being released on October 4th, which is the day Ground Pass was born. October 4th of 2023. So, sit back, relax. Hopefully, this will not be 3 hours. You know how Nick and I go. When we start talking, we do start talking. But sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy our little get to know Ground Pass episode.
So it's been 2 years, Anastasia, and one of the big reasons is we said that we wanted to do this was we kind of set ourselves up with a mission statement, and I think it's worth reminding people who are especially newer what that is, which we'll go into a little bit more, and periodically we'll remind people about what we're all about. But I guess we want to go into a little bit of the history now of how this all came about, and when we started recording 2 years ago. And I guess the main thing that I think you would be best explaining sort of the origin of it, Anastasia, because my earliest memory of anything to do with Ground Pass was a message I got from you on WhatsApp saying, "Hey, so I saw you across the room and I liked your vibe," almost like that, but in
Almost
tennis
like that.
internet terms. And no, it was more along those lines of, "Hey, I'm thinking of starting this podcast. Do you want to be the co-host of it?" And I was like, "I really like this concept. I wasn't. I'm not thinking of doing a podcast right now, but I really like the concept. I want to see where this goes." So, yeah, what drove you to think this would be a good idea?
Yeah, yeah. So to throw it back to 2023, weirdly had this mission of attending the US Open every single day. If you've been listening to our podcast for a while, you've probably heard this story before, but I attended the US Open in 2023 every single day. And yes, that was before the crazy prices that we have now. So I was able to attend the US Open every
Can we
day
not do
with
another ticket rant?
I know, I know. I should okay, we're not going to do one. We're not going to do one. But yeah, so I did it and what I came out of that sort of experience with was there's so many casual first time fans of tennis and I didn't feel like there was anything for them. I didn't think there were any sort of tennis podcasts or tennis media sites for them. I am a huge consumer of tennis podcasts, and all the ones that I was listening to, they were so technical. They were so sort of like, you already had to be in it. You had to know who the players were already. You needed to know how the game was sort of built and scored, and you needed to know all these little intricacies. And I thought, well, who's talking to the casual fans? I didn't know who that was. So that was my idea. But at the time, back in 2023, believe it or not, I didn't really watch much women's tennis. I have to say, I was pretty much 90-10. Not gonna lie, I was 90% ATP, 10% WTA. And I didn't want to start a podcast. First of all, I was very scared of starting a sports podcast because I was like, oh, people are gonna be like, what do you know? um, but I also then didn't want to start a tennis sports podcast only talking about men's tennis. And Nick, you had a podcast called WTA Weekly, which you still do. And I was like, oh, Nick talks all about the WTA. He would be perfect because I already knew you. We had done some streams together. I loved your vibe and you were very chill and we got along great. So I thought, well, I'm going to approach Nick and see if he wants to be the WTA side of this podcast, and it would be balanced. There would be an ATP side and then a WTA side. So I reached out to you and I was like, hey, would you like to do this podcast where we would talk to casual new fans to tennis who might not know all the little details, and we would help them navigate the sport? And that's where Ground Pass was formed. But I don't know if you remember. In fact, I want to play you a little clip from our very, very first episode because we didn't start off like, oh, Ground Pass, we know what we're doing. This is exactly what it is. In fact, we started the podcast Ground Pass without a name. And I don't know if you remember this. I barely remembered this, but I'm going to play this for you from our very first episode.
By the way, we're doing this so you don't have to scroll back all the way to the first episode, so that helps.
We're recorded. We're not live. Can you hear it? I don't think we'll ever be live, but maybe not. Who knows? Who knows where this will go? But welcome to the podcast with no name.
We've got a couple of names, right? I've seen a couple of good ideas.
We do. We have a couple of ideas floating around. Right now, Ground Pass is my favorite because, first of all, you already had a blog. Was it a blog called?
It was a blog, yeah, which you can go and find if you want and try and dig through my early tennis writings.
Everyone go look for it. But I thought that was a great name because it kind of it's everyone's entry into a tennis tournament. The first thing that is debatable too, but that could be a different topic for a different day. But usually when you've never been to a tennis tournament before, the first thing you do is you get a ground pass, which is your entry into the tournament before you maybe go for the high ticket seats or anything like that. But I like the name Ground Pass. There was also another one called Casual Fan for, because this is a podcast for the casual.
The Casual Tennis Podcast, which, very chill vibes. We're sort of sat here in our comfy clothes.
Exactly. I like that, the Casual Tennis Podcast. But yes. Can you imagine if we called ourselves the Casual Tennis Podcast?
I am so glad we didn't, because I'm listening back to that sort of brainstorming session that we put on the internet and thinking some of those names, no, doesn't work. Now, I am being very selfish because, yes, Ground Pass was the name of a blog that I originally had. I think I called it Grounds Pass because I didn't fully understand that it was actually a ground pass, the name of the ticket. But yeah, that was something I started back in 2021 because I was locked in my house, as a lot of us were, for reasons. And I really went, I need to find something else to do other than my job because I'm going insane. And I have many passions in life, and I was picking which one. I went with tennis because that felt like the one I was going to get least fights about. Little did I know. But no, still actually made the right decision. I joke, but actually when I see the other options I could have had, this was definitely the best one. And I set it up, and I was partly out of, I want to find a way of outletting all my tennis like geekiness, because I just was writing stuff for myself anyway, and I was trying to spam my mum with it, and I realized that she was not interested in half of what I was sending her. So I went out on the internet and hoped that other people find it interesting. And it started off as this is what tennis is about, and trying to get my friends to watch it kind of thing. So same sort of way, like Groundpass was accessible. It was the best way to get in. And I'd been to Wimbledon a few times and knew my way around. And gradually, as I became more and more invested in sort of the tennis sphere of the internet, it became a bit more aimed at that sort of fan. But originally, that was what it was for. It was for to help explain tennis and get people into it and explain what was going on, and who kind of the contenders were and things like that. And it was interesting when Anastasia approached me, because you basically went, oh yeah, this is why I got into this whole tennis thing in the first place, this sort of amateur media thing, because by that point I was then doing podcasts, and then I was doing YouTube, and I'd written I'd started writing for a shared blog, which sadly is no longer the case, but I thought it was really, really good stuff there. And so yeah, that's how it, but like it was, I loved going back to my roots of having something for people to kind of dabbling their toes into tennis, and not being overwhelmed by discussions of whether Alcaraz is the new GOAT, or
Yeah.
whether Iga Swiatek is good on grass and that kind of thing. And it was like, so I really like the sound of this opportunity. And I think having something that's a bit more of a chill vibe, where we can kind of be on level with people who don't know as much, is, I think, more fun for everyone, but also hopefully we're bringing a lot of other people along for the ride who might be intimidated by how frothing at the mouth some really hardcore fans can be. So yeah, I just want to provide more accessibility into tennis, and that's what I love about this, and that's what I think we should be here for.
Yeah, no, totally. It's, I think a lot of tennis can get super kind of, everyone gets in their bubble and they all get you're right. I was like, is it Sinner? Is it Alcaraz? Like, how many Grand Slams are they going to win? Like what surface is the best surface? Is the court slow? Is the court fast? And it can get so granular, and a lot of times people forget to just have fun with the sport, and they forget how we all just got into it, and that it's just a fun sport. And there's the opportunity to just treat it as such and just have fun with it, instead of getting into sort of the technicalities of it. So that's what I wanted to kind of support. But then also, for people who do want to learn about the sport, to have a safe space to say, you know what, I actually have no idea what they're talking about. I don't know, like, what do you mean serve percentage? Like, what do you mean forehand? Like backhand? Like, a kick serve? What is that? And to know that they could go somewhere like Ground Pass, ask the question, and not be treated like, oh, you don't know what that means? Like, what do you mean you don't know what that means? So I hope that is a place that we have kind of cultivated as a place that you can come to and learn about the things. And with our little like tennis lessons and, this week in tennis, because people just don't know what's going on, or they don't have the capacity like us. We are tennis nerds. We watch way too much tennis. Sometimes it's not enough. We're always like, more is more. But some people still want to keep up with it, but don't have the capacity to keep up with it. And I hope that that is what we can do for them, is provide a fun, accessible way that they can keep up with the sport and not feel like they're being talked down to. And that's kind of where we were coming, to them with Ground Pass. It's that sort of entry level, super chill, no frills way of getting into tennis.
And by the way, some of these things we're talking about, we mentioned, we don't know either. Like, we don't know either.
Exactly.
And we're okay with that. Like, this is our
Yeah.
opportunity to find out as well so that you can know. Like, I mean, a lot of the stuff that Anastasia's mentioned is stuff that you would find on our social media, so TikTok, Instagram, like the shows that we do, like This Week in Tennis and tennis lessons. Like, a lot of the tennis lessons are like, we've had to go and research. Like, one of our most successful videos that we've done is about performance buys, which neither of us really knew about, and we had to go and you had to go and research that.
Yeah.
One of the tennis lessons that I think is on, like, it kind of hidden away in our vault just in case we ever need it, is on unforced errors, because I remember you asking me to do it. So and I was like, yeah, sure, I know that one. So yeah, I like that we're on the same sort of journey as well, even though we've been at this sort of tennis fan game for longer. So yeah, this is what we're about. Do you remember the moment when you realized, okay, this is working?
That is a really good question. It's really funny. So we have it's interesting because we have this thing called voice notes, like voice memos. So we ask people to send us voice memos. And I don't know if you remember this, Nick, but remember the voice memo that we got from someone, I believe it was Monte Carlo, if I remember correctly. It was from a woman talking about her daughter who was crying during a match. And she sent us this voice memo. And it was just this beautiful story of just, you know, telling us about the tournament and her daughter crying during a match and she was scared. I think it was a Nadal match. I can't even remember the details of it. But it was one of our very, very early months. And I thought, wow, like this is just such a real story of someone who went to a tennis tournament, was kind of terrified that her daughter was crying during a match and didn't know what to do. And she sent us that voice memo. And it was one of those things where I was like, I think we have something here. I think we have a real human connection here. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, we ask our listeners, if you're going to a tournament, send us a voice memo letting us know about your experiences so that we can play them on the podcast so that other people can hear what it's like to go to different tournaments. And we've gotten them from everywhere. I am so proud that we've gotten them from everywhere, from the Korea Open to, Malaga to, we've gotten them from Monte Carlo. We've gotten them from the Madrid Open. It's been one of the coolest things that I can ever say that we've ever done. And each time we get one, I just have a moment of just like, wow, I can't
And
believe someone just sent us a voice memo.
And that's really cool that we were doing that, because that's one of the things, the ways this has kind of evolved over the years, because we originally set ourselves up as an introduction to tennis podcast, and the way we were talking
Yeah.
about it and kind of talking about things in a very open way. But if we literally just did explain a podcast, we'd probably run out of topics within a couple of months.
Yes.
Tennis would have given us news stories that we could give our opinion on. But I think what I really liked that we started doing was kind of encouraging, what our mission now also become is to get people not only to watch tennis and enjoy it, but also to go to tournaments, which is why we're ground pass, that's the lowest level. Like, I say getting a ground pass is the best ticket you can get to a tennis tournament. And it's usually, unless we're not doing a ticket rent, it's usually the most affordable option. We have ticket rants in our US Open episodes. Go back and listen to this.
Yes.
So I think that's really cool. And then it became increasingly about, because one of the things I remember you telling me about was like, oh, we've got to introduce people to who players are, because people only know the biggest names. And then it became about who you could see on a ground pass, kind of getting excited for the underdog stories we have in tennis. And like, this is the thing, even the broadcasters and the hardcore tennis fans get the most excited when you get an underdog story or a new talent succeeding. So why can't we just talk about that all the time? Because there's lots of really great stories out there and lots of great success to celebrate. And that kind of shift us where we're talking about our editorial voice and mission. Like, those are the stories that matter the most to us. That doesn't mean that we won't get excited for when Carlos Alcaraz or Iga Swiatek win a 6th Grand Slam, because they're now both on 6.
Crazy.
You know, that's really cool. That's really cool to see sporting history made and seeing excellence at play. In the same way as like seeing that French Open final between Sinner and Alcaraz and that incredible spectacle, that sort of interesting toing and froing momentum between Swiatek and Sabalenka. It's not that it's not interesting, but that's not what we want to talk about all the time, and it's not the most important story. So for me, that's what it's now about, and it's very important to me that we still kind of do, which is why we will mention it. So yeah, we try and bring you a broader range of topics. Yeah, and so that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
And I guess
And
that's what you want to do as well, right?
yeah, no, totally. And it's, I think that's what really drives how we decide what we talk about on the show versus what we don't. Because I always say this, there's always going to be someone who's going to tell Yannick Sinner's story. There's always going to be someone who's going to tell Iga Swiatek's story and Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic. But who's going to tell Mattia Bellucci's story? Who's going to tell Haley Baptiste's story? Who's going to tell Lulu Sun's
Christian Harrison,
story?
Evan King.
Who's going to tell Kristen Harrison and Evan King's story? Who's going to tell their story? But yeah, Heliovara Patton, who's going to tell their story? And that's what I think I would love us to do on Ground Pass as well, is like you said, we're encouraging people to go to the grounds and see tennis in person on a ground pass, because that's also how you expand your view of tennis and how you learn faster the game of tennis. But then when you do go on the grounds, it's sort of like, well, you're like, well, who's that? And we want to be able to tell you, okay, that's who that player is. That's who that person is that you're likely going to see on a ground pass. And some of those stories are so good. Some of those stories are excellent. And, you take, for example, someone who's doing really great right now on the Asian swing. Ava Lease is someone who has had such great stories this year, coming as a lucky loser at the Australian Open and making it to the 4th round. That's someone that if you went to the Australian Open on a ground pass, you saw that journey and her excitement through all of those moments. So those are the stories that we want to tell, and that's kind of how we decide what stories we tell. Is someone telling this story, and if not, how can we tell that story?
Yeah, and that's really important to us. And I think telling stories and ultimately is what makes sport accessible, really. It's the interesting thing. Like, I know 1 or 2 people who got interested in tennis by just watching it and finding the sporting dynamics and the athleticism and everything else like that, the process of playing the game interesting. But most people connected with a person and the way they were, or found out about them and thought they were a really cool personality or something like that. Like, Serena and Venus Williams had that effect on a lot of people. And I think they had that effect on you. It was Roger Federer for me. So for very, very different reasons. But that's... Yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say, you're right. Like, a lot of people come into a sport from a story. Very few people just turn on the TV, see tennis or any sport really, and be like, oh, the way they hit the ball, let me keep watching. You know what I mean? They usually follow, oh my goodness. I mean, here's exactly how we got a lot of new listeners to our podcast, was Coco Gauff's run to winning Roland Garros. People followed that story and they wanted to know more about Coco Gauff. And so they were looking for podcasts to listen to learn more about Coco Gauff. And we got so many new listeners from that moment, from the French Open this year, that's how people got into the sport. And then they're like, well, I want to know what is she doing next? Like, what's Coco Gauff doing next? And then they're sort of like all of a sudden following the tennis tour, you know? So, yeah, that's how a lot of people get into sports, is through storytelling. It's hardly ever kind of just turning on the TV to see the sport itself and then be hooked. Sometimes it is, but I think you're right in that respect, that a lot of people, it's the story that gets them into it. And I think for us, it's trying to make that more accessible to people, telling those stories so that it shows how accessible to it. And also, in a way, I think in general, before we move on to our next thing, is, I think tennis. I was actually listening to the Served podcast yesterday, and someone he had a Q&A episode yesterday, and I think the Served podcast just copies us, I think, is what they're doing for the most part.
Sure. This is getting released after the Surf podcast.
Look, I think I had the idea first.
Are you on the phone with producer Mike?
For the most part, no. But someone had said, why does tennis have this country club aesthetic and reputation, when for the most part, when you do go play it, it's a very sort of tough sport to play, to follow, to sort of like participate in, and very much not a country club sport. And I think tennis does have this reputation, even amongst sort of fans or people trying to get into it, that, oh, it's very sort of like, you have to be rich to be able to go to a tennis tournament, and it's country club, and you have to dress a certain way to be able to go to tennis tournaments. And that's not true. Like, a lot of people really do think, oh, I'm going to the tennis. And you're just like, no, you're just going to a tournament. It's sport. You can wear whatever you want, be who you want, as you are. And I hope through Ground Pass that we're showing that. Get a ground pass. You can go. There's so many different levels of tournaments too, because I think as new fans, they're sort of like, okay, so there's the Grand Slams. And you're like, no, they're the 100, 1,000 events. They're 500s, they're T's, they're challengers. There's so many different levels that you can go to that are maybe even closer to you than you thought. In Champaign, Illinois, for example, there's a challenger right there that you could go to that you might not have realized. And you're dreaming of maybe going to, the US Open and saving money, when you could probably see some really high level tennis players right at your doorstep. One of actually a really great moment from this summer was I went to the City Open, and a really cool thing that has been happening is people come up to me at tennis tournaments now and be like, I listen to Ground Pass, which I will never, ever, ever, ever get over. Every time it happens, I freak out, I cry. It's a thing. But a girl came up to me and she said, I was listening to an episode and you mentioned the City Open, and I live in Philadelphia. I wanted to go to the US Open, but the tickets were so expensive. But you had mentioned the City Open, so I decided I would come to the City Open instead. And she had met me, and we were both sitting on a very tiny court watching Naomi Osaka practice, like courtside, this far away from Naomi Osaka. And she was saying, I'm so happy I listened and I came here, because this probably would never have happened at the US Open. And I would have paid, 4 times, 3 times as much. And that was such a proud moment for me, because I was sort of like, yes, that's it. That's what we're saying. That's what we're saying. Like, you don't have to go to the US Open to see high level tennis players.
No.
They play a lot of tournaments in the States. And it's not just the US Open.
No, and part of the expanding the fan base is about making tennis financially accessible to play and to watch. And it's interesting what you're saying. Like, that being said, if you can go to a Grand Slam, do, because it's a very different experience. It's a very exciting experience. Yeah. I always love going to Wimbledon, and but I think one of the best things I ever did was go to the Birmingham 250, which is now a challenger event, because that help me to see some top players much closer than I probably would have at Wimbledon if I'd gone to a stadium court ground pass at Wimbledon probably be the same. And you got to get a kind of different vibe because, yeah, the majority, you're right, tennis does have this reputation, which was true, but not anymore. Because any tournament you go to, including the US Open, will kind of show you that it's not. Now, there are certain exceptions. Wimbledon does retain that aesthetic because it's part of the British summer season. You know, it's the same sort of status as Ascot races. But even then, I don't think. But even then, their whole ticket policy is quite egalitarian.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you think of it, like how easy it is to get tickets at Wimbledon, their policy is we still want to get as many people in, and we want it to get as cheap as possible, and we want to pack the place, and has been for about 100 years. So yeah, let's get out there. Go to tennis tournaments that are smaller. Go get ground passes. Don't break the bank to follow tennis. Try and enjoy it. I think that's kind of where we're coming from here.
Yeah, totally. So let's talk about a little bit about us. I know. Let's get to.
I mean, we've been doing that for about half an hour now, Anastasia. So, like, but this is a very self-indulgent podcast. Let's be honest.
Yes, it is. But let's get to know Anastasia and Nick just a little bit. Just a little bit. So we'll kind of do this maybe a little bit rapid fire as quickly as possible. And we will just ask each other some questions from what I have written down here. But before we jump in, let us answer this question, each of us. What is your tennis story? How did you fall in love with the sport? Nick, you start.
I think I've done this on the podcast before in bits and pieces. I've said it now and again. I fell in love with the sport because my mum had it on from when I was very, very small. And it's just been a part of my life. I just thought it looked interesting. Like people being able to hit a ball back and forth. I remember being a bit of a culture shock how big a tennis court actually was when I first started trying to play it. When I would have been about 7, and then I didn't probably pick a racket up again until I was 15. But in fact, I'll tell you this story. I don't think there's photographic evidence of this, but this is like how baked in tennis is into my personal history. During one Wimbledon, Mum and Dad had a house with a garden, and there was a patio at back. And what they did during one Wimbledon was they just set up a makeshift tennis court on the patio. And I was very small, and the level of smallness will be very clear from this next part of the story, is that they put me in my high chair in the center of the court across where the net was, and I was the umpire. I'm not sure if I could walk yet, but yes, this is the level of like, yeah, that's always just been part of my life. And then I decided I liked it. I remember hitting a tennis ball against a wall. Like I would try and watch tennis for 5 minutes and decide I wanted to go outside and play against the wall. And it was always part of it. And just sort of sitting down, watching it with my mum. And then it became kind of an escape for me during kind of summer, during school time, where I could like, you know, de-stress from having to do schoolwork or whatever. And around about this time, Roger Federer was hitting his stride, and I thought he was so cool, like how effortless everything looked and how sophisticated he was, and just everything about him just appealed to me as a player. And then Andy Murray started showing up as this scrappy underdog that I couldn't help but kind of be drawn to, even though I was a bit up and down about whether I actually liked his outbursts. So yeah, that's how I started watching it. And like, then I discovered there were other Grand Slams, and I started watching the other Grand Slams, and then I kind of ended up here, like this far down the rabbit hole. I was following the tour. I was checking the ATP website every day to see who was winning, that kind of thing, from the age of about 15. And I guess that just hasn't really stopped.
Yeah, that's cool. It's cool. I had a different experience. I actually came to it older because I was sort of like a child athlete, like I guess you would say. I did track and field, so that was sort of my entry into the sporting world. And for some reason, I remember so distinctly the very first time I saw Venus Williams and Serena Williams on television. It was when they had the braids and then they had those like beads in their hair. And I had those too. And it was the first time I saw athletes that looked just like me. And I was like, they look just like me. What do they do? Like, what sport are they doing? And it was tennis. And I was like, okay, what's tennis? And that's how I got into tennis. And I would only watch them. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I watched them and then I learned about other, players. And no, no, no. I just watched Venus and Serena because they were the athletes that I was kind of drawn to. So it's more sort of I followed the sport through them, and it was just following their achievements and how kind of they were doing things so quickly and achieving so much so quickly. And I just loved that about following the sport and learning through them the sport. And I actually kind of weirdly, because again, I was more of a track athlete than tennis, and kind of faded away a little bit from tennis. And when I came back into it, there were these two guys. It was Rafa and Roger. And I was like, who are these guys? And I can't even remember. It was very nearing that time of the Wimbledon 2008 final that everyone was kind of talking about. And I was like, well, who are these guys and what do they do? And like, why is everyone so crazy about this final? And I watched the final and I was like, that final. And I'm a very talked about this before. I work in film and television. I very much am a cinematic kind of person. I see things through stories. And that final is one of the most cinematic tennis moments ever. You watch it, the winning, the lights from the cameras flashing in the dark, because back then there were no like lights. If it got dark, they stopped the match. Just the lights flashing from the cameras. Nadal wins. He like goes to hug, Roger at the net, and then he goes to his family, but then he climbs on top of the like boot. I mean, the whole thing was just a story, and I was hooked. That was it. Like that moment, I was hooked on tennis, and I will never forget that match or that moment. And that's how I kind of got back into tennis after first basically I think falling in love with two athletes that played tennis, taking a break from it, and then coming back because of this sort of cinematic match, really. And, finding out about these two players and then basically becoming a Fidel fan. But I think because of that moment, I, you know, fell in love with the sport in general. And I never look back. I never look back. What was the first live match you saw in person? Do you remember?
In person?
Yeah. Or what was
Or
the
do you
first
mean
tournament you went to live? Like,
so
what
like
tournament did you go
so
see?
not on TV?
Exactly, not on TV.
It was the ATP finals
No
in
way.
yeah, it was the ATP finals because they were in London. And I was
Ah,
16 years old. It was 2010, and I went to see. Yeah, it was easier to do than Wimbledon because you can just book tickets for sessions. And we went and me and my mum, and we went to watch, and it was Thomas Burditch against Andy Roddick,
no way.
and that was the first proper live event I went to, and it was so cool. We went back the following 2 years. The second year we saw Roger Federer against Mardy Fish, and the year after that we saw Federer again against Janko Tipsarevic. So I've seen Federer play in person twice, which makes me very happy. He didn't make it easy, but he I think Fish didn't make it easy, to be honest. But it was a good time. But yeah, that was the first time ATP finals, and I always thought, oh, I'll get round eventually to going back there because it was such a great vibe. And then I never did,
Mm-hmm.
and then it moved to Turin. So um,
Oh,
I guess I'm going to Italy. I don't know. I really, really want to do the WTA finals, to be honest, but that's even a bit further out.
yeah. Now that's far, far, far away.
Yeah.
For me, didn't see any live tennis in person till I moved to New York. So I moved to New York, couldn't afford at the time because when I moved to New York, I was working as a production assistant. I worked at the Gap. Couldn't afford to go to the US Open at the time, even though at the time the tickets were much cheaper, but still But the very first live match I ever went to was to go see Serena Williams at Ash in 2016. 2016, got a ticket to Ash, spent at the time my savings to get a ticket and lodge, bought a honeydews. I'm going to put a photo of me holding my honeydews. I still have that cup actually. And I saw Serena Williams play Ash, and that was my very first live match in person.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just dawned on me thinking about it, it's like this November will be 15 years since I first went to watch tennis live. Next year, US Open, we're going to be we have to do a 10-year anniversary of you going to go see
Yes.
Serena Williams. Who did she play?
Oh, wow. Who was she playing? I don't even remember. I don't even remember what round it was. It had
Well,
to be one of the early rounds for
she won, right?
sure.
Because she got to the semi-finals that
Oh,
year.
yes. She won. She won. Yeah. It had to be one of the early rounds because there's no way I could have gotten like late round tickets or even second week tickets. No way. Yeah. It had to be like an early round. That's now my mission to find out who she was playing. There must be a way to find out because I have the photo, so I'll probably like look up the date and see who she was playing on that day. But yeah, that was fine. Okay, what else?
Cool.
What other questions do I have here? Dream match you've seen in person. Okay, this one is there is no way I'm ever going to top this ever. So obviously, you know how at the US Open, or you just don't know who you're going to see, basically. You just buy the ticket and hope for the best. So this was another sort of splurge. This was still when I was going to Ash. I literally do not buy Ash tickets anymore. But this was when I was still going to Ash pre 2020. In 2019, I had gotten pre-sale Amex tickets courtside in Ash because I had never done courtside tickets before. I think this was the first round. So I think it was a Tuesday. It was either a Monday or Tuesday. So like second or first day of the tournament, the cheapest they would ever be. And I was just like, hey, whoever I see. I'm just there for the experience because I've never had courtside tickets before. Guess who I saw?
Early round Ash 2019. Serena again?
Yes. And
Rafa.
Roger.
Close.
Yeah. So I got to, when the schedule came out, I almost died. I literally almost passed out. I was like, I'm going to see Serena Williams and Roger Federer courtside. Oh my God. And I was working. It turned out because at first I thought I wasn't going to work, and then I got called into work, and I literally talked to my boss and I was like, I completely understand, but you need to understand that I cannot come in. I cannot come into work on this day because I got courtside seats and I'm going to see Serena Williams and Roger Federer courtside. So there is no way I can come into work. And luckily for me, he understood. But that was my dream match moment that I can't ever top that. There's no way I will ever top that because I'm also a different tennis watcher now. Like that was back when I still was someone who I would be a fan of a player. Like right now I'm not a fan of any player. So I just don't think I'll ever top that for sure.
You're a Sinkeraz fan as a dynamic.
Yeah, I'm a Sinkeraz fan, but actually, right now I'm a Taylor Fritz stan, so I don't know.
Is this
Sinkeraz can
previewing
go
the
sit down.
podcast we're recording?
Yeah, yeah. Previewing for tomorrow's podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really cool. I don't think many people's tennis days would top that, especially if you're kind of courtside. I mean, I've been courtside for a Novak Djokovic match,
Ooh.
which was cool, but it was a very one-sided Djokovic match, and it was the last match of the day was baking hot.
I mean, those were one-sided matches. Those were like first round.
Oh yeah.
It was the first day.
I think I've definitely talked about this one on the pod because it happened while we were doing the pod.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure there's the pod from over a year ago with a voice note of me kind of this tired but happy vibe. And I'm so glad you went with Dream Tennis Day rather than actual match, because I was really racking my brains going, I could pick this, I could pick this, I could pick this. It has to be Wimbledon 2024. And I got an email saying, do you want to enter the Wimbledon resale? Because I hadn't got ballot tickets. And I was like, yeah, sure. Bought a ticket for centre court on the first Thursday. So that would be the end of round 2, singles wise. And again, like you, didn't know who I was going to see, and you don't know until the day before, but you have to buy it. I bought it in March.
Yeah.
And I was down there anyway because we managed to get some tickets through a different means, through a different ballot, the LTA ballot, me and my mum. And so we were there the first 2 days. So I'd done Wimbledon the most amount I'd ever done, like 3 consecutive days. And then day 3 came around and the centre court schedule came out and I was like, oh my word. And it was Novak Djokovic, then Iga Swiatek, who is a player that I have wanted to see in person for a very long time. Like, I've been following her career, well, kind of from about when she started to get big, and was just like super into her story, still am, and was so excited I finally get to watch Iga Swiatek play tennis live. And then the final match was Andy Murray in the doubles with his brother Jamie in the first round. And I'd never seen Andy Murray before either. It was a player that I just kept missing.
Mm-hmm.
Rafa as well. I never got the opportunity to see Rafa play, sadly. But yeah, I saw Andy Murray's play, and that was my dream tennis lineup. Absolutely 100%. I was cheering for Iga, even if it was a one-sided win. And then getting to see Andy Murray with the full Wimbledon crowd behind him play his heart out with his brother, and they didn't quite make it. They lost the match, and then being there for his Wimbledon farewell ceremony was really, really surreal, because you only ever see those things on television, right? And it was like, what? And I kept thinking, what's this like to watch on TV? Wait, I'm here. And yeah, that I don't think, even if I go back to Wimbledon every year, which I probably won't because I don't live close to Wimbledon, but if I went back to Wimbledon every single year, if I got to fly to the Australian Open, I don't think that would top. That tennis day will be topped for me. Yeah. Being able to tick off seeing Iga for the first time and seeing Andy for the first and last time and seeing that special moment. So that has to be that for me.
Yeah, yeah. I like that we have very good kind of like just impossible to top moments. Like those are two pretty impossible to top moments. This is a very interesting one. If Ground Pass wasn't about tennis, what would it be about?
I mean, Formula One.
Of course.
It would be the Formula One. Because I have this habit of hooking people I know into Formula One, and then the next thing, this is what we talk about other than tennis, is like, did you watch the race? Like, I have had Anastasia going, I can't believe I missed Isaac Hadjar getting on the podium.
It's still till today. I was literally thinking about this yesterday because I was listening back to look at what we're doing now. We're talking about the F1, but I was listening back to the F1 podcast about the post-race debrief, and I was just thinking, can't believe I missed Isaac Hadjar's first podium. Can't believe it, but I did. I missed it. But yes, Nick got me into the F1, and if Ground Pass wasn't about tennis, it would definitely be about F1 now.
Yeah, 100%. That's the other sport that I will spend hours talking about or watching, and I think we watch it for I think if we ever did an F1 podcast, I think that would be very interesting, because I think you and I are probably fans of different drivers and have a different approach to the sport.
Yeah.
But it probably wouldn't be too dissimilar to this, to be fair.
No, I think it would actually be very similar to this. Yeah, I think it would actually be very similar to this, but
we are not doing another podcast on Anastasia. No.
Okay. Next question. What is a dream episode or collaboration?
I mean,
dream episode.
That's hard because, episode or collaboration. Because, if I was to do complete dream collaboration, the Serves podcast.
Completely. Dream. You know what? It's so funny considering how much I talk about them. I wasn't actually even thinking about them, but thank you, Nick. This is why you're here. By the way, the amount of time people just don't understand. Nick is like half of my brain. We will talk about things and it's like in one ear, out the other. And then Nick goes, so about that thing. And I'm like, thank God for Nick. Because if you didn't remember, definitely I wouldn't. But see, yes, Nick, yes, you're right. That is our dream collaboration, would be with the Serve podcast for sure.
Yeah, I love hearing Andy Roddick's very realistic take of what it's like being a player.
Yes.
And yeah, I take what he says over pretty much anything else. There's a reason why he's now the biggest podcast in tennis right now. So yeah, big fan of that. Otherwise, okay, no, I do know. I do have a dream episode as well as that. I'm going to be cheeky
Ooh,
here.
what is it?
Want to do an episode, I hope this happens, where we are
Okay.
both in the same room. Anastasia and I have never seen each other in person, ever.
I don't know how tall Nick is. He says he's 6'1". I don't know. He says he is. I don't know. Could be. Can you imagine the other day? Well, actually, I won't tell you what I was thinking because, I mean, I guess it's kind of manifesting. But Nick, can you imagine if we did our very first podcast in person at Indian Wells?
I mean, that would be fun. I was actually thinking of doing it in McCarran Parkhouse, but...
Or McCarran Parkhouse would be also, that would also be a second best. But I know how much you kind of want to go to Indian Wells.
I do.
So I was thinking that could be a good venue.
And like you could definitely find some venues there to you could record something. Yeah, that would be cool.
Oh, totally.
This is like, we're going to need to keep the podcast going for another few years.
We'll see.
To do that, but
Yeah.
I will do this for as long as it takes.
To get to Indian Wells, yes.
And I'll
New
take
goal.
New York as a second best.
New York, I mean, New York is that's a pretty good second best. Okay, let us get into our audience Q&A.
We're focusing on us, we should actually, think about the listeners who, are a big part of this podcast. We love the audience participation we get. Whether it's, we will do stuff on social media answering questions. We'll play your voice notes on it. It really does feel like a proper kind of crowd podcast where, we'll steer the ship, but we do want to hear from other people.
Okay, so let us start first. So we asked for questions on all of our, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. Let us start with Instagram because that is where we got most of our questions from. The first question we got here is who designs our merch? Our merch, which we're wearing here, and you can't really see the back, but I'll leave a photo. Oh, good. Nick, doing the work. Yes, Nick. That looks great.
You just tell me to work it.
It looked good. It looked good. Anyway,
this is the Groundpass runway, everybody.
Could be. But my really good friend Yavinia designed our merch. She is so awesome. I had this idea in my mind. So I will say the idea came from me so basically Nick and I say this thing every time there's a swing of some nature, especially in the US. So it started in the spring. We would be like the US spring swing. And then in the summer, we're like the US summer swing. So each of these swings, they're different city stops. So I had this idea of what if there was some sort of design where there was sort of like a road that kind of hit all the spots and then ended up in New York for the summer. So it like went to each of the stops in the city, and each city was sort of represented by a landmark from the city. So that's what I told my friend Yavinia. And I was like, Yavinia, what do you think? And it literally took her, I told her this let's just say I told her at 11, like sometime in the late morning, early afternoon. By that night, she had the very first drawing of the Groundpass shirt. It was crazy. She completely understood what I was saying, but Yavinia did this. She's such a great graphic artist. I will leave all her information in the description of this podcast so you can check her out on Instagram, so you can check out all her other work, but she is great. She designed our t-shirt. Next
Does this mean that we're getting US Spring Swing merch?
maybe, possibly. TBD, coming soon. But we still have merch available to be bought. We're almost out of the hats. So I think we only have two left. So if you're listening to this on the day of our birthday, by the way, so when we first launched our merch, we had a founders discount. We're also running the founders discount on our birthday, only one day only. So you have a chance to use it. But yes, so go buy our merch. And yes, possibly, yes, Nick, we will have a spring swing t-shirt. This question we kind of already answered, Nick. This next one is, where did you both meet? What's the connection? Story of the podcast birth. We answered that.
Yeah, I don't think we specifically said where we met, but it was doing a YouTube stream together.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. This is an interesting one. I don't know, Nick, what do you think? Which tournament is Ben Shelton most likely to win his first slam?
The problem is,
easy.
are you going to say the French Open for the lols?
Definitely Roland Garros.
I mean, okay, fine. If the tournament he's going to be most inspired to win at, US Open.
Okay. Yeah. But what else could you think of though?
I mean,
were you gonna say the Aussie Open, because he also has done really well
I was
there.
really seriously thinking about the Aussie Open.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, by the way, Ben Shelton, I think if it's going to be anywhere, though, I think it is the US Open, because I believe that is where he really comes alive. And that's where I think he can use the crowd against Sinkaraz, because that's his biggest problem. It's not where he's playing, it's who he's playing.
It's who he's playing. So this question, I'm going to read it out, but it's definitely on our to-do list, and we're going to answer it in a bigger sort of video. But this person asks, why does Coco commit so many double faults? This is also a question we've actually gotten in a YouTube comment of someone asking about Coco's coaching setup, and asking us to kind of like explain like her different coaches and like what the old one did and the new one. So I think this is going to be sort of a bigger video, and it'll come to you in a Match Stories sometime soon, which is a series that we do when we talk about bigger topics like this. So coming soon. This is also an interesting one. Nick, I don't know how you're going to answer this one, but how long will Carlos stay number one?
Oof. I mean, that's tough because, okay, I think he's going to stay number one for a while. I think it's going to need Sinner to reverse some things that happened at like the US Open and getting a couple of wins at Masters. I think Sinner's going to be snapping his feet for a bit, but I definitely don't think he's going to be losing that ranking before the next US Summer Swing.
Okay.
I think he's going to be keeping just ahead of Yannick during that period. Yannick does have an opportunity, I guess, after the spring swing, after the Sunshine Double, because he didn't play, but neither of them are defending many points from there. So yeah, I think Carlos has an advantage for a while. In terms of ranking points, I think their actual matches will go back and forth and always will.
Okay. Yeah, I remember posting about this, but Andrea Petkovic, who is a former player, now commentator, she said at the beginning of the year, kind of like out of nowhere a little bit, but I feel like she's always so smart about her predictions, that Carlos was going to have the best year ever. And she was so right. And if you don't read her Substack, I will leave a link below, but I really, really love her writing. It's really smart. But he is having the best year ever. I love this question. This might also be one of those that we do a bigger thing about, but it's Open first timer 2020 tips for me coming from Europe. So this is a big one. This is a really big one, but it's also kind of the perfect time to be asking that sort of question, because it will involve a lot of prep, especially in terms of just what the cost is right now to come to the US Open. We do tournament guides, and based off of this US Open, I'm going to be doing a bigger tournament guide. We're also going to be doing videos that we're going to be posting to our YouTube. If you go to our website, you'll see all of our other tournament guides. So I would definitely say stay tuned to that. What I will say is you have to be willing to, at some point, kind of wait for the day of. I know this gives Nick heart attacks. Every time I say this, Nick is like, what do you mean? But I think based on the resale market that we have right now, what really happens with tickets is even with the Amex presale and when they release tickets to people, I definitely would say go on those right away. And if you're able to get tickets at face value, get them ASAP. Like get them right away. And even what I would advise is if you are financially able to and you can get tickets at face value, get them for all of the days. Even if you don't know when you're coming or, anything like that, get them for all of the days, because with the US Open, you can always resell them. You can even make money. You can always resell them if you change your dates or anything like that. But I would always say just get the tickets so at least you have those. But if you don't get the tickets, I would say don't buy resale tickets right away. Wait for the schedule to come out, wait for the prices to settle. Don't buy resale tickets in July or, before the schedule comes out, because that's when the prices are the highest, because people are desperate to just come to the US Open and they're just buying the resale tickets, and they do eventually drop once the schedule comes out and we're closer to the tournament start date. So that's what I'll say, at least for now, but stay tuned for a bigger review of that. What else? Let's see. There is more. There is more. We got a lot of questions. This is a funny one. Is Daniil Medvedev a lost case, Nick?
Go watch the Lost Boys video that Anastasia made.
We will link it below. Who had the idea for the podcast name #backstory?
We talked about that.
Yeah, we answered
A
that.
little bit of both. I got the name Anastasia. The rest of it was Anastasia.
Favorite tourney and why?
Wimbledon. It's got a lot of sentimental value for me. And if you listened to the podcast earlier, you'll understand that's just been a big part of my childhood. I still think it's the best vibe of any tournament I've been to. I guess, or the ones I've liked the most. But I know it's ironic given I got ground passer and I should probably like the small tournaments. But a Wimbledon ground pass is an amazing ticket if you're willing to queue for it. And I've had tremendous days out doing that. So yeah, for me, Wimbledon always will be. It's not all about Wimbledon for everybody else, so I don't want to be a complete hypocrite with what we said at the start of the podcast, but it has to be that for me.
Yeah. Mine changes all the time. It changes all the time. But I have to say...
Is it Charleston at the moment?
It was Charleston, and it definitely does have... Right now, it's just it's Indian Wells Charleston. They're just it's that little thing. And I think Indian Wells just still has that little bit of an edge above Charleston. But yeah, right now it's Indian Wells Charleston. But Charleston is such a happy tournament. I cannot explain to you how happy Charleston is as a tournament. So it's one of the two there. This is a very interesting one. And Nick, I feel like we might have to do a part 2 of this in order to not have this be a 3-hour podcast. But we have questions here asking us about our podcasting tools, which is so interesting. Tips about starting a sports podcast. You're asking us for tips? Wow. Biggest misconceptions about tennis. So you know what, Nick? I think we will do a part 2. Because we have a lot of questions coming in, and we're recording tomorrow our regular episode about the week of tennis. So we'll just do a part 2 Q&A so that this is not a long one, because I definitely want to answer a lot of these questions here. But yeah, thank you guys for sending in all these questions. I'm so excited to answer them. Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, let us wrap it up, Nick. The last section. looking towards the future. Um, Nick, do we have any hopes? Hopes for year 3. What do we hope Ground Pass becomes in year 3? That's a tough one. I feel like that's such a
Yeah.
tough one because I don't know about you, and maybe we should start here, but I don't know about you, but I didn't expect this would be year 2.
No,
Yeah,
I didn't. I mean, I didn't know what to expect really. I didn't go in with any kind of expectations of we're
same.
going to achieve this, and this. I came in to have fun and hopefully people will enjoy it, and we'd get a lot of people enjoying it, and it turns out a lot of you enjoy it. So I don't know. I guess for year 3, my big hope is that if I go back to what we were saying earlier about the beginning of like when I first came into tennis and what I was trying to do with the original Ground Pass blog, which is sitting dustily somewhere in the corner of the internet and probably full of adverts. I would love to see more interaction with sort of British tournaments and like British fans. I love this international family we've got. I'm loving that we've got people from the US and from the Philippines and from Korea and from Poland and um, dotted about all over the place. But I want to make tennis big and significant in my backyard, and I want to have friends I can talk to in person about tennis, as well as all of you online. So I'd love to see a little bit more happening in Britain for us. I think that would be my hope.
Yeah, I completely agree. We do have a really big American audience, I would say. It skews. I mean, our biggest audience, I would say, on our podcast are it's American and then UK and then we go Australia, New Zealand, that sort of thing. But I definitely agree with you that it would be nice to see a bigger UK audience as well. And that would mean Ground Pass on site UK. Ground Pass on site UK, who knows? That would be interesting to see in year 3. But I do think, just like you, I did not see this in year 2. I think the cool thing, and maybe it's our secret weapon a little bit on Ground Pass, is it might seem like we planned all of this, but we really didn't. We
We don't have a team. It's us.
we really don't. I think, you know what, actually, that is something we should probably just dispel right now because I do think a lot of people think there is a team. The team is Anastasia and Nick. That is the team. And thank you. Thank you for thinking it's a team because I think that just speaks to what Nick and I do and the work that we put out because we're really proud of what we do. There was no plan. I think we have just the I think the only plan that we had was to be consistent. That was it. Like to make sure that we were having fun, we weren't overextending ourselves, and to be consistent. And that was the only sort of plan we had. And everything else just came with it. And I think Nick and I have enjoyed the storytelling part of it. We've enjoyed kind of, expanding to basically what we see the need is. Like the tennis store, like I think one of the kind of everything that we've added on has just come organically from something that we saw in our social media responses. And we were kind of like, oh, okay, we'll do that. Tennis, This Week in Tennis came from Alex Ayala's story in Miami. Like I basically made we weren't even doing TikTok videos or anything. And I randomly did one when Alex Ayala had beaten, I think if it was not Iga, it was before, maybe it was Yelena
Or Maddie
and
Keys.
or Maggie Keys. Yes, I think maybe it was that one. And I just made a random video. And I think that was the first sort of everyone talking about Alex Ayala. Like that was the first sort of like explosion of it. But then what the responses we were getting was sort of like, oh, well, what's next? Like, what's the next tournament? What's the next thing? And I was like, oh, well, This Week in Tennis, like, and it was such an organic thing. Tennis lessons, again, we were trying to figure out a way. People would ask questions like, what's this? What's this? And we are like, ooh, tennis lessons. Nick was doing tennis lessons. So all our stuff has just come from need, and we just go with the flow. So we'll continue doing that in year 3. We'll just go with the flow and hopefully keep telling stories.
Yeah. We'll keep making it up as we go along and hope no one notices.
Exactly. It's professional. Team. The team. How can listeners support or be a part of the next chapter? I think actually the best way listeners can support, there are many ways. We have, I think, what I'm really proud of, even though it is a lot of work, believe me, it is a lot of work, even though we make it seem super effortless, is we try to be wherever our listener is. So if you're on TikTok, we're there. If you're on Instagram, we're there. If you're on Substack, we're there. So we try to be wherever you are. And I think how our listener can help us is sharing that. Like, share our work wherever you are that you see it. If you are on YouTube, you can share it with a friend and be like, oh, if you're into tennis or you want to get into tennis, share, our episodes or anything like that. And I think also, communicating with us. I think that's actually a really cool way that you can help support us, weirdly, is communicating with us. Like, what do you want to see? What do you want to know? What do you want to more of? Because then it kind of can narrow our focus a bit more.
Yeah. And we are all about user generated content, and we're here to support the listener, kind of going back to what we're here for. Like, at the end of the day, we don't know what you need to know and what will help you. Or, we don't know everything about every tournament, so we want you to tell us. So, yeah, the fact that you can be part of the journey is the exciting thing. And I think, for year 3, having more of you in it would be great. I think
Oh, that would be great.
more ground passer content, less of us, more of you would be really, really cool.
That would be so, so cool. Yeah. Just more voice memos, more sort of injection of ground passers in the ground pass content would be the dream. Would be so, so, so cool. What is one thing you'd like every new listener to take away?
Well, okay. Every news to take away? Be nice. Enjoy the tennis. Be positive. That's what I want. Enjoy the tennis for the positivity and for the stories and for the moments and the excitement. Everything else can make it seem like the entire world. And it isn't, but it's still my favourite thing. So be positive. Enjoy an underdog story. Celebrate success. Be wowed by an incredible match. And share our enthusiasm for the sport. And that's what I hope everyone takes away from the episode.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better. Thank you, guys. This was awesome. Nick, I actually really, really enjoyed this episode. Not only as a way to share what ground pass is, but as a reminder to us and to me and what we're about. It's a nice kind of reminder, reassurance that this is what we're doing, this is who we are, and I'm really happy to be doing it with you, Nick, because you're awesome.
I wouldn't want to do this with anyone else, Anastasia, or you
Yay.
listeners either.
Exactly. You guys are great. Again, thank you so much for being here with us. We enjoy having you as part of our journey, and we hope you stick around with us for yet another year. And let's check back in after year 3 and see how we did. Bye, guys.